Su Qing's novel Beauty on the Crossroad original text 2. Sister in Qingdao, she said, "My surname is Zhang and my name is Xiaomei. I have no brothers, only one sister named Ming, who is currently recuperating in Qingdao." Recuperating in Qingdao sounds like a very generous statement, right? What's more, my sister is suffering from tuberculosis. It is said that she should go to a beautiful place like Qingdao to recuperate. Unfortunately, this is not the case. She has been to Qingdao for more than 2 years. Although she went there because of illness, it was not for the purpose of recuperation. She worked as a lecturer at S University to make money to support her life. Unexpectedly, when I got there, the disease continued to get worse day by day. At first, I could barely support myself to teach, but later of course I had to visit someone to work for me. Until one day 3 months ago, she suddenly coughed up a lot of blood again. The school saw that she was in trouble and asked her to formally resign from her position, but they still provided her with convenience and help. She moved to the affiliated hospital of S University for treatment. At first she was afraid to inform her mother of her serious illness. My mother lives in Rencheng and is old and frail. She still cares about me and my 2 girls. The income from renting the land at home is not enough to support our lives. Most of the money I make in Shanghai is used to subsidize the family. When my sister entered the hospital this time, she not only vomited blood, but also suffered from severe pain in her right foot. She could not touch her leg below. There was another sore on my right buttock, which continued to ooze pus. The sore was as big as a lotus seed. It is said that this kind of thing is not called a sore but a leak. It can never be cured if pus leaks until death. As for the cause of leg pain, she first wrote to her mother and told her mother that it was rheumatism. And later she said it was arthritis. It was not until she arrived in Qingdao that she realized that tuberculosis bacteria was also at work. The doctor used x-rays to prove that it was bone marrow tuberculosis. The people taking care of her in Qingdao are her cousin Shikan and his wife. Brother Shikai works in Qingdao Bank, and his wife cooks and washes clothes every day. Only one son is studying in college, and he happens to be in my sister's department. So the family has become particularly close to my sister. This time I came to Qingdao because Brother Shikai wrote an express letter to ask me to come. They saw that my sister was in a bad situation, and they were afraid that people would complain if something happened in the future, so they asked me to come and discuss it first. Little Ant, you are here. When I carried my suitcase onto the pier, my 18-year-old nephew, the National Security Guard, shouted. After not seeing each other for a few years, he had grown taller, darker and thinner. When I told him this later, he said, "I like swimming. During the whole summer vacation, I learned to swim every day and rolled on the beach, so my skin got tanned." Then he was very happy again. He told me all the information about Qingdao Beach. Alas, at this time I felt that I was really getting older. He was so excited to hear what he said, but I still couldn't get him interested. I was only busy asking about my sister's condition. "How is she doing these days?" The young man raised his eyebrows and replied, "Auntie, right? I haven't had a high fever these days. It's because I took Alban pills to take effect. These pills are hard to buy these days. My father searched all the pharmacies in Qingdao for her, and they said it was out of stock." Later, my father asked someone to find an idea. The price limit of this medicine was 2 yuan and 6 cents in gold yuan coupons per bottle. My father was willing to pay 8 yuan and finally bought it on the black market. I said casually, "It's really a blessing to your father and your mother to take care of you," after saying half a sentence. He felt that it was too thoughtful, but it seemed perfunctory, so he changed the topic. "Now your father is working in the industry, right?" he replied. "Yes, Dad wanted to pick up my little Anne in person, but because the ship was late, he couldn't wait. Mom is preparing snacks for you at home." So we took to rickshaws, going uphill and downhill, and it took a long time to reach their home. Sister-in-law Shikai came out to greet him. Her face was very haggard and her clothes were old. The place they live in is the staff dormitory of Qingdao Bank. There are only 2 rooms, and the layout is very simple. I heard in Shanghai that they already have a lot of savings. Why is the situation like this? What I saw with my own eyes today. They are thrifty to support themselves and generous to others. I am grateful for their kindness in taking care of my sister. The snack was a bowl of boiled bird eggs. Sister-in-law Shikai brought it to me personally. I said, "Thank you, sister-in-law." She quickly waved her hand and said, "You're welcome." She had already eaten soaked rice, so I asked again, "Where's the National Security Guard?" Seeing that there were only to half-cooked small egg yolk balls in the bowl, she had to pretend that she couldn't eat so much and insisted on giving half to the security guard. The security guard refused to accept it. So sister-in-law Shikai said, "Let's do this, little ant. Don't give in to the things in your bowl. There is some sugar soup in the still pot. And there are also a lot of broken egg whites." The national security agent doesn't eat much in the morning, and his father doesn't eat either. I think since my little ant insists on asking him to eat some, please drink the contents of the pot. The national security officer refused at first, but then he probably couldn't help but feel hungry, so he took what was left. I swallowed most of the bowl of Guangjing sugar soup. As I looked at him, I felt sorry for the boss. "Are things in Qingdao very expensive these days?" I asked after finishing 2 egg yolks. She wiped my mouth with a handkerchief and replied with emotion, "Isn't it true? Pork sells for 1 yuan and 56 cents per catty. And bird eggs, such small bird eggs, how about a dime each?" he said, as if he felt a little embarrassed to say that bird eggs were expensive now that he had just treated me to them. So he quickly changed his words. "Let's go see my aunt now." "Okay," I nodded. I also told her that she didn't have to accompany me to the hospital, and that it would be better to let the national security team work harder and accompany me there. But she insisted on going with her because she had cooked several dishes for me yesterday, and she happened to share some for my sister to eat at this moment. The 3 of us were debating how to get there, and Mrs. Shikai suggested taking the school bus of university as the National Security Agency was afraid that I wouldn't want to. So I quickly said that it would be better to take the school bus to save some trouble. So it was decided that the 3 of them would walk a short distance first and catch the school bus at the bus stop closest to home. After going uphill and downhill, they arrived at the affiliated hospital soon. The hospital is a very decent hospital. We got off the car at the gate, walked through the sidewalk with flowers and trees, and finally arrived in front of the 3rd hospital. So the National Security Guard led the way with a small box of food in hand, and I followed behind. Sister-in-law Shikai was left outside the door because she walked slowly. I said softly, "National Security. Let's walk slowly and wait for your mother to go there with us." He said it didn't matter. My mother often came here to see my aunt delivering side dishes, and she knew the way. I am even more grateful to their family. We walked up the stairs lightly, and a strong smell of soft water hit our nostrils. Only then did I realize that this was a hospital. Otherwise, I would have been vaguely thinking that I was in one of Shanghai's first-class luxury hotels. They wrote the patient's name on the door of each ward. I walked through 5 or 6 wards with the National Security Agency, and then I saw the 3 words Zhongming clearly written on a rectangular door plate. Oh, I can't bear to think of the name control. It has been standing at the door of the house for 3 months. It is a symbol of my sister's long suffering here, and I can't help but feel sad when I look at it. Domestic Security Officer Kyer said to me, "Little ant, please wait outside for a moment. We haven't told eldest aunt that you are here today, because Dad said." I'm afraid she sounded too excited. "I can't sleep." After saying that, he opened the door and went in alone, as if he was going to the patient's bed to say something, and then whispered, Little ant, come in." I hesitated outside the door for a moment, then wiped away my tears and carefully opened the door and went in. The ward is bright and spacious. There is a bed in the middle. There is a child next to the bed, and under the child is a white spittoon. Because there are so few belongings, the room looks empty and scary. My sister was lying on the bed with a pale face, upright, and seemed unable to move at all. If people didn't see her eyes moving, they might think she was dead. Then Chikai's wife pushed the door open and came in, panting slightly. My sister and Ran looked at us, trying hard to pretend to smile, but her eyes couldn't help but turn red. I couldn't say anything for a moment. We had no choice but to look at each other sadly in silence. Her eyes were sunken, and her lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but she couldn't say anything for the moment. I had no choice but to smile bitterly. When she smiled, I noticed that her teeth seemed to have become particularly long. Her body was covered with a white sheet, and all her flesh and bones had disappeared under the cloth, leaving only 2 orange arms exposed. They were so thin that their skin was not wrinkled, but even the skin seemed to be taut, tightly attached to the inside. The bones are horribly jagged. Her fingers were also stiff, white and sharp, like dead wood with frost, which made people feel cold. I felt a little scared in my heart, but I had no choice but to sit down on the edge of the bed. Gingerly took her left hand and said, "Sister, I see you look good these days." As I said this, I felt ashamed in my heart. Am I comforting her, or am I perfunctory and deceiving him? So sister-in-law Shikai, who was standing next to her, also continued to say so. Only the young national security guard remained speechless. My sister didn't seem to believe it at first, but later she couldn't help but start to believe it. She smiled and said, "Really? I'm afraid it's still the effect of Alban. The fever is reduced, and the complexion looks better." I couldn't bear it. Looking at her face struggling on the verge of death, she lowered her head and fiddled with her fingers. I saw that the gray-white fingertips had neatly grown light red nails, as if they had been smeared with Hungdan. I couldn't help but wonder. "Woke up. Sister, why are your nails like this?" I wanted to add the word "so thunderous," but after all, I felt it was inappropriate, so I swallowed my voice in a muffled voice. She seemed to realize it immediately and said, "That's the skin color of a patient. You see, there are no healthy rings on my nails, and my fingertips and toes are cold. That's because of a high degree of anemia. Can I have a blood transfusion?" I asked eagerly, naturally feeling unsure. She replied, "How can this be effective? Blood transfusion may be useful for people who suddenly lost too much blood." But at this point, her sincere smile disappeared again. Despair was in front of her, and her heart suddenly became heavy. After a while, he suddenly laughed like a joke and said, "Unless I have magical powers like Sun Qingja, I can just go to Taishang Laojin and steal a few elixirs." After saying this, from then on, not only did we not feel her funniness or playfulness, but we felt even more heartbroken. It seemed that no one could even say a word of comfort. "Auntie, I cooked some beef for you today." Shikai suddenly thought of beef, though she was so grateful that he hurriedly said it. "Thank you for asking for your trouble." My sister said these 2 sentences as if she was endorsing them. "Sister, how is your appetite?" I tried hard to find something to say. "It's fine when there's no fever," she answered mechanically. Everyone looked at each other and had nothing to say. Later, Shikai's wife frequently peeked at the National Security Guard's wrist. There was nothing on the security guard's wrist, only a rectangular watch. The sister seemed to understand what she meant, so she sighed and said, "The school bus at noon may be arriving soon. You should go out early and wait." Then sister-in-law Shikai stood up as if she had received a pill, said, "It doesn't matter to us. If you can't catch the school bus, you can still take a rickshaw. But Andy, you should also rest. National security. Little Andy, let's go together." I had to stand up with them and say to my sister, "I'll see you again tomorrow." Then he walked out of the room with the 2 of them. After the door closed automatically, I couldn't bear it and walked away because my sister was still left inside, lonely and bothered endlessly by tuberculosis bacteria. The sign at the door of the room has black characters on a white background. What clearly caught my eye was the 3 characters Zhang Ming. Maybe one day the black characters will be wiped away, and my sister's life will no longer exist in the human world. The National Security Guard saw me standing there and refusing to leave. The boss couldn't bear it, so he complained to his mother, "Actually, we should let my little aunt sit for a while. Mom is always thinking about the school bus. In the school bus, it seems that she has missed this class. The school bus is like the president losing the entire Qingdao." This made sister-in-law Shikai speechless. I knew that her frugality was justified, so I quickly stopped the National Security Guard and said, Okay, you 2 must not argue. In fact, we should have gone back long ago. Your mother is at home. You still have to cook food for us." The lonely patient had no choice but to let her stay alone in the hospital. The beautiful scenery outside had nothing to do with her. She could only think about the uphill and downhill climbs, or come out to see them in her dreams.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.